In this episode, a guy in his garage fixes a fuel leak, redoes some radiator fans so he doesn't melt down his motor like Chernobyl, goes through and tries to figure out why the temp gauge isn't telling him Chernobyl is coming. Get to watch a guy drill into a brand new intake in an attempt to stop a leak, and more. You'll have to stick around to see what else happens. It's alive. All right, let's go sneak this thing around the block and start shaking it down. It's a new day. You can see we're back in the garage. I've got some work to do. I need to put the ignition switch back together because when it went out at Nick's shop, I was able to make it work. But this thing, garbage. We'll deal with that later, but I had an extra switch on the shelf, was able to get it in, make it work, and now that it works, I'm gonna take this thing around the block. It's doing really well. We're gonna keep shaking it down and we'll give you an update about that later on. Let's check on a few things. Well, yeah, 180 there. 200, we should have fans. I'm gonna say that was a successful run around the block. It ran really good. It is got some quirks. Notice some things. When we were warming it up, one, this fan isn't working, and it's not just that I unhooked it. I unhooked it because it wasn't working and it was hot. So out of the gate, that frostbite kit, it's not staying there. We're gonna have to fix that. The other thing I noticed is there's a pinhole in the Edelbrock intake. Tiny little hole, and it's not the bolt, I promise. But there's a little gap next to that bolt. Right there. See that little crevice where there's a little puddle of coolant? It's a tiny little pinhole, and it slowly fills up as this thing gets hot. We've done our first drive around the block. We learned a few things. We learned a few things at Nick's shop crawling along the frame. Let me give you the shakedown list. It's not that short, but it's not that long. The critical ones. We have to fix the radiator fans. That broken fan, that's gonna mess us up real quick. We don't wanna overheat. The tiny fuel leak on the fuel line mid-frame, we'll get under the truck, get that one straightened out. The coolant pinhole, I'm scared of this one. And I'm a little bit upset about this one. Same with the rad fans. I'll tell you why a little bit later. The temp gauge, we have to fix that. We need to know what temperature the motor is at. And taking the heat gun out, it's reassuringly under 200 degrees. It's been living about 180, 190 at the thermostat, which is exactly where it should be, but we need to know that on the gauge. The alternator bracket, I don't know if you've seen in the footage, I'll put some of the footage here. When the motor is running, you can see the alternator dancing. It's dancing back and forth because it's not rigid enough and fixed in place, so we need to build a support bracket to hold it. So we'll get that done. And gotta get a tag sticker on it. Need to go grease the U-joints. I need to figure out why the backup lights aren't staying on, and the speedo's not working. But other than that, it fires up and moves under its own power. All right, now it's up in the air. Let me show you a few things that we got to get after. One, there's a pinhole right there next to that bolt. I'll show you some footage of it filling up from the bottom, and there's gonna be a trick I show you how to fill that up. One of the other coolant leaks we got to address is this lower rad hose right here. Because if I touch that, it's wet. It's wet because it's leaking coolant. We're gonna do something to make that seal better, and I'll show you all about that too. Forgot one. You may notice that I put the truck really high up in the air on one end. Use jack stands. For safety, always use jack stands so you don't get smushed. You're a meat bag and this thing will squish you. So, it's way high up in the air because the fuel pump now is higher than the fuel tank. And since we need to work on that fuel line, that'll naturally push the fuel back in the fuel tank. Important. We're gonna try and limit how much fuel we spill. First up, let's get this radiator fan set up off the truck, and then I'm gonna show you some things that might help you guys out in the future. Pay attention, this might save you some money later on. Let me show you a neat, cool way to make water flow uphill so you don't make a big old mess with coolant. First, get you a bucket. Put the bucket there, but I'm not gonna open the drain cock. I'm gonna take off the cap, set it where I'm not gonna lose it. I'm gonna grab me a piece of rubber hose somewhere in my stash of things. I have a nice long piece of rubber hose here. Stick the rubber hose in the bucket. Put the other end in the radiator. Put it all the way down at the bottom. Now, if you notice, water's not flowing uphill. Well, we need a little bit of a siphon. What I'm gonna do, instead of opening the drain cock in the radiator, I'm just gonna use a pump and I'm gonna siphon the radiator out. And it should drain the fluid, and it shouldn't take a lot of effort. On the inlet side, give it a pump. Now, there's fluid coming out. And I don't have to do anything but let it fill up in the bucket. Y'all keep an eye on this for me. All right, why am I so mad about the fan not working? Well, one, it's a brand new motor and that could have burned up some things, and I don't want to blow a head gasket or overheat the thing the first time out. Come on now. For $500 and something, these two fans should have went in, been OEM grade, and I shouldn't have had to mess with them for a decade at least. Where the gears are really ground right now is if we look over these fans, you notice a few things that are missing? I'll give you a sec, we'll see if you can see it. There's no quality marks, there's no model numbers, there's no country of origin, there's no way I can replace this and actually use the same setup. If this was a quality fan, there would be, you know, your brand, your model number, country of origin, and a quality check. See how this has a metal housing, this has a plastic housing? I speak Six Sigma, I speak lean, and I speak agile. By day, I'm a business analyst. By night, I'm a wrencher out here. And this tells me that somebody produced these fans to a price point to squeeze profit out of it and took the quality out of it. And as the consumer, I don't appreciate that. And as expensive as it is for $500 for a fan setup, this thing should have been bolt on and never messed with again. Deja vu time. Couple of fans and another piece of shroud. All right, we're gonna hot rod this up. We're gonna use a set of real Spals this time, made in Italy. These things are OEM grade. They're rated for 1800 CFM a piece, and they should move a lot of air. Now they don't quite fit my shroud. Let me show you a cool trick though. Reach over in the handy dandy metal pile. For a $9 piece of metal, I think we could build a little shroud extension on this side and that side. and we'll have a couple of Spal fans. Let's get to it. I'm gonna start off cutting my aluminum angle iron to 2 lengths that'll be the same height as the shroud. Go through, figure out where I want to put my holes in it. I'm going to drill some holes in the side of the angle, and then I'm going to drill some holes in the side of the shroud, and I'm going to use pop rivets to fix it. Then I figure out the layout for where I want the fans to be, and then I'm going to use some nut certs to actually attach the fans to the shroud, so it'll be a clean install and everything will be serviceable from inside the engine. Very ginger carefully.
All right, now there's power, the accessory circuit is live. Let's see if it works. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reach back here and ground out the sensor. And this should trip both those fans. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's both of those. Dude, these move so much more. Just for fun. I'm so happy with that. Oh, that makes a big difference.
Now we got the rad fans out the way. Let's take that off the list. Let's go work on the coolant on the lower pump part, because that's the easiest and less scary one. The gasoline one I worry about, and drilling into an intake, gotta build up some nerve. Lower rad hose. So, inspecting, I don't see anything crazy here on the hose. It's a brand new hose. No tears, no like alarming things. I checked the hose clamp and it does got a little deforming to it, but I also torqued the crap out of it when I saw that it was leaking, so might have to grab another one of them. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab some sandpaper and I'm gonna dress that sealing surface. Like, you know, you dress a pipe when you're getting ready to solder it and see if that seals it up. If it doesn't work, yeah, we tried. Mild confidence this will work. I'm just gonna use this is some 320, pretty mild. It's aluminum, it's not super hard, but the smoother we can make that surface, the better it'll seal. It's pretty porous just because it's cast aluminum. So let's cut this doesn't have to be exact. All right, with my little strip, I'm just gonna come down here, wrap it around, and kind of go to town. I'm gonna be here a minute because sanding is sanding. There's no way to speed it up, no way to slow it down. It's just to do it. I don't know how much of that you saw, but I took my strip and I just rubbed it around this ever so slowly for a while. And you can see on my glove, it took aluminum off. It is a lot smoother to the touch all the way around. And now, hopefully, when I go grab a hose clamp, put this back together, this won't leak there. Clean seal. Hopefully. I'm making it up as I go. We'll see if it works. Hose clamp. As you can tell now, we have the lower radiator hose back on. Hose clamp is tightened down. It is on the correct side, positioning wise. Pulled the upper one out of the way because we need room to work right here. And this one I'm a little nervous about because this requires a drill, a tap, and some sealing-y stuff. I'm nervous because if I mess this up, the entire intake's got to come off. And that is a lot of work. I don't know how well I'm gonna be able to show all this to y'all, but I've got my precision masking tape out. I'm gonna drill where that pinhole is. Then I'm gonna come over here with a tap and hopefully somehow, with all these things in the way, tap down in there, then put a grub screw down in that hole with some sealant on it, and hopefully that stops that leak. Engage, sketchiness, level red. Go. Not really looking forward to this. If you want to see what it did, drilled the hole. That part's over. Now for the even trickier part. Gotta get a tap in here. Let's tap this. I'm gonna start this by hand. Push it down. It's not that big, but also it's aluminum, so it doesn't take much. Start to feel it build a burr, then spin it backwards. Tapping is a game of patience. It is not about speed. Next step, we're gonna use some more RTV gasket maker. We're gonna put it on those threads and put it down in that hole. And then hopefully we're done. A couple things off the list tonight. The high stake ones, I'm confident, mildly confident. Hope it works. We'll see what happens. Please don't make me take the intake off. I don't want to take the intake off. Okay, let's do this. Let's seal the thing up. Just a heads up for any of you guys, if y'all ever have to use RTV gasket maker and you need to get it back on the road, it's best that you let it sit for about 24 hours. Best results I have is letting it sit overnight before I put coolant or anything back in it, and then it seals up good. I'm hoping that's the end of that saga. Coolant, done. Coolant pinhole, done. Okay, time for me to go cook dinner. That's progress. I'm happy with that. It's a new day. We're gonna undo this fitting right here, take this out, and then polish the flange. And that should stop this thing from leaking, because it only has a tiny little drip. But I gotta take off that hanger and another hanger there so I can get the fuel line loose enough to be able to maneuver it in here. But Nick, your exhaust, it's awesome. All right, I got it off. Next thing I'm gonna do is polish the inside of this flange. I'm gonna use that stone on the drill and the Scotch-Brite. Now, word of caution, that is not a brushless drill. Fuel vapor. It goes boom, so we will turn on a fan. We'll have lots of ventilation. We're only gonna go slow. We're not gonna make sparks, and we're not gonna go fast enough to make sparks. We're gonna be very careful. Next step, because I don't want any trash in the line, I'm gonna blow some air down through the fuel line, and then I'm also gonna come by with some brake clean it up. Just because I have a filter to catch all it up here, it doesn't mean I want anything in there. So I'll blow some air through it, make sure it's good and clean, then I'll get it back together. And ta-da, back together. This should be ready for service. Hopefully, like the ones up top, they don't leak anymore. Let's go. U-joints, let's go grease them. We saw on the power probe this had 12 volts when the circuit was active, and this was grounded to the block, and it should. As it heats up, it should ground more and more, and that's what creates the signal that goes into the gauge. I now have just a spare piece of wire grounded out on the chassis, and I can test this circuit by turning on the key, and if it pegs out the gauge is working, and the sending unit is bad. So let's go find out if the sending unit's bad.
I'm gonna turn the key. If it pegs out, the gauge is good. If the gauge doesn't move, the gauge is bad. And then the sending unit might still be bad, but we'll find out if the gauge is bad or just the sending unit. Oh, wow. Pegged out right away. That tells me that sending unit isn't doing a dang thing.
So we got to get a new sending unit. We'll work on that part, but I don't think that's going to stop us from going around the block. I don't think we're going to melt this thing down. We've got 2 working fans, we've got a coolant system, and we're going to have our temp gun, and we're going to be checking it a whole bunch. So let's start with that. All right, what we got left are the backup lights. That one I just need to adjust the switch on the column. The speedo, there's not a gear on the inside of the output shaft on the transmission to turn the speedo cog, so that's a problem for another day. We'll check for more leaks in the morning, but it's off jack stands. Update, we went around the block twice. We popped a 30 amp fuse that I thought was a 40. Put a 40 in there and we're gonna let that thing cool back off. What I'm doing is going around and checking the vital temperatures. I'm checking to make sure the radiator is cooling, the fans are pulling air through the radiator, that nothing is extremely hot. And you know what that means? We can leave the neighborhood. It's a privilege to get to drive these old vehicles, and it's a privilege to kind of make this and share this with you guys. So I'm just gonna sit around and soak this up. You're gonna see me looking at the gauges and probably talking to myself a little bit, being like, oh, okay, that one's good. Oh, that one's okay, good. You know, we don't know each other. We're getting to know each other again. And it's really nice to get to drive this thing and see the scenery change through the windshield. So, hope you enjoy. We made it to the gas station. Filled it up. And the starter went. Turns out it was just the mega fuse underneath. The starter's heat soaked. Working on swapping out that fuse. And we're back on the road. But now it's suddenly running rich. So I'm looking down, checking the gauges, and the decision is to go back home. So let me tell you what we found during our shakedown. One, the fuel's not leaking anymore. That's really awesome. It made it to the gas station and back. That's really awesome. I got to drive the truck. I'm really stoked about that. It's a lot of truck. But we did have some things that they're not up to the task. And as we were shaking this thing down, that's what we wanted to find. We need to wrap this one up. I had to sleep a little bit because we found a lot of things during the shakedown that have to be addressed. Let me kind of go through from one side of the engine bay to the other to say what we got to do next. Let's start with the fuses. The little one, this should have been a 40 amp fuse. I should have changed that out when I put the two bigger fans in there. My bad, didn't know. I was excited, hooked it up, just started running it, but I put a 40 amp fuse in and those fans work great. But what I also decided because of that is right now there's only one relay running both these fans. We're gonna convert this to run on one relay per fan so we have some redundancy. That's how we fix that in the future. And then that way, heaven forbid, if anything, we lose one, we have another one, we should be able to get home with it. The other fuse we popped, the mega fuse. Had to do a little research on this one. The mini torque starter on there, it's for an OEM big block application, up to 9.5 to 1 compression motors. This is a 10 to 1 compression motor, and it's got a lot of rotating mass. It's a 540, it's a hydraulic roller. Like, it takes a lot of effort to turn that. We're overworking that little guy. We got to get a bigger starter for that. And by adding heat to the equation, with it being right next to that header, yeah, that thing was doomed. We're overworking the little guy. So we can take care of that. We'll do some research, figure out the correct starter that we need, and get this thing where it cranks over. The sending unit, that's another brand new part that's not working right out of the box. Very disappointing. Our grub screw and our pinhole. That one I'm a little disappointed with. It's not leaking there at the pinhole, but it is leaking in another place because the aluminum is porous in that area. So this is a bad casting. This is a bad intake. How do we partner with these companies? And basically, both we need to benefit from the quality, they need to benefit from the information. Now, how do I get some science into this and some input into the people that are quality checking this and in your production line to where other people don't have this problem? What's going on? I don't want to see Americana on jack stands or tucked away in a garage. I want to see them out on the road. And if we can't get good parts to keep them out on the road, you know, as stewards of these things, that breaks my heart. I know every time I drive this, I promise you, somebody is going to smile. I don't care if they're 6 years old or 70 years old. This thing makes people smile, and it makes me smile. Seeing it in the garage is nice, but it's best when it's out rolling around on the road. Should have known that I needed a bigger starter for a bigger motor. I learned, okay. But the intake and the 2 frostbite fans, like, come on. Sending unit, we got to do better. So how do we partner with you to do better? I would love to know that. Like, do you need more R&D? How do we get with your quality people to be like, hey, what processes are, you know, this is my business analyst coming out. I'm sorry. I don't know if that's even possible, but it'd be nice to know. I got questions about your processes and things and how we can help. Because, you know, I'm a guy in a garage. This is a heck of a test bed. You know, 700 horsepower is going to break anything that's garbage. It's that simple. And it being in a big piece of Americana, it's a heck of a canvas to test this kind of stuff on. And I wanted an old school retro build, and I want to use old school retro parts with modern quality in them. And R&D, that's what we're doing. If y'all want to see, because I'm curious, do you think we should cut this intake up and see how porous it is? Like, get it on a bandsaw, take a cross section out of it and look at it? Because I'm curious, like, actually what kind of quality it is, because that intake isn't cheap, and I'd love to take one apart that's already junk. And since I can't send it back, because I have definitely modified it, I've definitely installed it on the vehicle, might have some use. So let me know if you want to see that. Let me close this out first by saying the channel is growing. I'm humbled and I'm grateful for every one of your views, the ones that are liking, commenting, and those interactions. And by the way, if you're enjoying watching me get my butt kicked by brand new parts, hit that like button. That helps the channel out. It doesn't cost you a thing, and it makes this thing grow. If you really enjoy it, hit the subscribe button. And I don't know if it does anything because I've never asked for this, but hit the bell and it'll tell you when I put out new videos, because I apparently have a lot of work to do. Got to take an intake off, got to change a starter, got to do some electrical, you know, good things. But I don't want this thing crammed in the garage all winter, so I got to figure out how to budget to buy some more parts. That's gonna hurt, but we'll figure that out, and we'll figure out how to get this thing on the road. I've had a taste now of what it's like to drive this thing, and I want more. I want more bad, because this thing is great. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Till the next one, I'm Gorham. We'll see you later.